Okay, it's Memorial Day. We had a day off, so we decided we're going to try to get a little more done on the Firebird, and she wanted to give a shout out to the veterans.
Yes, we want to tell you all thank you so much, and we appreciate all you do.
So we're going to see if the auto parts store is open, and I got to get some heat shield for my fuel lines because now that I got my headers on, they're running really close. So she's going to run over to AutoZone and get that and a few other little odds and ends so we can get some more stuff done. Okay, I decided to mount my battery tray, and of course it didn't fit. I expected nothing less from Chineseium, I guess. And so first tool you use is, kind of beat on a little bit, re-drill some holes. And I got it out here and I scuffed it up, and I got some adhesion promoter on it, and I'm just going to spray it down with some paint because that E-coat isn't going to last very long on a battery tray. So I'm going to get a little paint on this and let it sit out here in the sun and dry. Yeah, I'm sure that any leak from the battery is gonna just ruin that E-coat in no time. I've seen where E-coat sit outside and just rust right on through, so get a good thick layer on here and let it dry, and then we can bolt it in. That way when we go to start it, we'll have some place to put the battery. Alright, let that side dry and flip it over. Okay, I've got this heat shielding stuff on my fuel line running up here behind the headers, and it ends right here. I've got to get a 1/4-inch hose for that return line, and I'm going to follow the 3/8 up that way. And we'll get the Velcro type that can wrap around it. So, a couple more things and I think we'll have our fuel lines run to the fuel pump. Okay, well, I'm waiting on more fuel hose. Figured I'd get this high pressure power steering hose routed up in through here. And as you can see, it's kind of a tight fit in there. Still trying to figure out how to get a wrench on it. Kind of gonna be running into everything trying to get this tightened down. I don't know if we can come in from the top or, well, it's just stuff in the way everywhere. I think I might get it this way. Running into something over there. See if we can flip it around. Might have to make a special tool. Maybe a crow's foot? Well, kind of getting it from here. We'll keep at this until we can one way or another figure it out. We'll get that tightened down. Okay, got the bottom hose tightened up. I'm gonna see if I can get my plug out of here. These are my favorite little needle nose pliers. Man, they grip good. Alright, so let's see. We're going to be able to angle. Okay, let's see if we can maneuver this in here. Get my hands down in here. Should line up about there. A little bit of wiggle. Maybe we can get it started. Is that it? Yeah. Okay. It's actually threading in. Being cooperative. Alright, see if we can get a couple of turns on it. Oh, actually, I'm gonna need 11/16. Okay, let's see how this little stubby wrench fits in there. Yeah, I think it's gonna. Actually, I'm glad I found this stubby wrench. I think it's gonna work better. Get this one cranked down, and we'll be good. It's really long threaded. Sooner or later. Okay, I think I'm gonna need to find a longer wrench to snug it somewhere. That's just too short, not enough leverage. So we'll get that tightened down. Okay, I got that line snug down good. Seems like it's gonna work out pretty good. I just gotta get a piece of hose to loop for the return side, and while I'm waiting on that, I guess I can get my carburetor in there, because I got this hose that's going to be plenty long enough to connect up the carburetor. So I'm going to go ahead and get all my tape off of here and see if we can bolt down the carburetor. Okay, let's see if we can get this carburetor on here. I've been putting it off because it's just 4 bolts. So let's go ahead and get it tightened down and make sure the throttles are going to open and all that good stuff. Get it evenly. I have seen people tighten carburetors down on one side and have huge vacuum leaks. Change this filter. Got the one size fits all wrench, and can't find my 1-inch wrench, but that's gonna work. Let's see. Oh, see, they're kind of crooked and mashed. Well, favorite little plier tools and see if we can dig it out of there. Man, it got mashed. Well, maybe I'm gonna need a pick tool or something. Well, gotta find one. Okay, got that one dug out of there. A new one in. And spring. That way we're not putting a bunch of junk in the carburetor, even though the gas tank's brand new, but you just never know. So, get this snug back down. And connect up our fuel line. So it's lined up. Okay, a couple of hose clamps, we'll get that hooked up. Okay, let's see if we can get this hose in here. twist. Okay, another twist. All right. I tried these Chineseium ones. They jammed up. So I dug through and I found the ones that say Made in USA. And they actually worked. It's awesome. Okay, got my PCV valve hooked up, power brake booster, and the vacuum advance hooked up. So, now that's done, I want to go ahead and get that battery tray in over there. Okay, over here on this side I got C-nuts. The other side there's no place to put C-nuts, so I got some nuts and bolts. So let's see, this wasn't really the best fitting battery tray I've ever seen, but did a little hammering and drilling on it. Everything should line up now. Let's see if I can get this one over here started. And you kind of push down to line up the bolts over here. And put some washers on there. And let's see if this one's going to line up. Not very well. Well, let's see if we can thread it in the hole. Okay. Now, get this here. And I need to find half-inch wrench to hold these nuts. Okay, found a wrench. I want to see if I can tighten these down first. Okay. See if I can reach this. Alrighty, pretty solid. Alright, now we got a place to put the battery. Okay, it's the next weekend, and last weekend I ran out of time and parts, so we rounded up a few more things. Got some hose to finish up my fuel lines, and some of this wraparound insulation to avoid the heat from the headers. So I got that to do, and in here I've got some wiring that I'm getting ready. I got terminal in for the starter solenoid and the traditional purple wire, and a cable with some terminal ends. So we need to get that soldered together so we can bolt on our starter. And I painted the whole thing, so right here where it mounts, I'm going to have to strip off the paint just to make sure we get a good ground. And bunch of little odds and ends. So we're going to go ahead and get busy putting some more stuff on. Okay, my return on this fuel pump was aimed right here, right next to that crown nut, and that was not good. It would have rubbed on the hose like so. So I had to bend it back a little bit, and I think it's gonna clear now. I've got it all the way as far as it'll go, Just want to make sure we're not dragging our drag link on our fuel hose. That would not be good. So, see if we can get this clamped up. Make sure we got enough tube inside there. Maybe we'll come back a little bit. Wants to jump over there. Okay, now let's see if we can route our supply hose. If we can get up in there to tighten down the hose clamp. See, these are opened up quite a bit. All right, if we get it just right, I think I can sneak up in there and get this tightened down. Hopefully this hose isn't gonna lay on the drag link or kink off. I think I got enough slack here, and we'll get this one tightened down. Alright, that's out of the way. I think everything's gonna clear. So, now I need to get some insulation wrapped around it back here and where it's still close to the exhaust. Okay, I've got my insulation wrapped around the tubes coming up here, and up in there got a clamp holding it up, and down here got a clamp, and over here I still need to get one more over here, and I think one about right there to hold that over. So let's get some clamps and see if we can get this held down. Okay, first I'm gonna run this pointed bolt up in there, clean out the threads. All my pointed bolts have a big washer on them, and they don't really clear the clamp. So let's see if we can get a regular bolt to start in here. Might have to get a longer one, but we'll see if this will catch. Oh yeah. Alright. Now I can take this temporary zip tie off of here. That's gonna hold it up pretty good. Okay, one more clamp, and I think we'll have our fuel system complete from the fuel tank all the way to the carburetor. Just got to get this last clamp in here. It's going to cooperate. It's not going to cooperate. Come on. Get in the hole. Did it go? Maybe. Okay. That's going to work. Okay. Got to get my power steering return hose hooked up, and I've got it wrapped up in this conduit stuff, kind of like the store-bought one, and we're going to see if we can loop it around because they're so close to each other. We're going to have to make a loop so it doesn't kink off. Get one tightened down. Okay. See if we can get this looped around. Aim the hose clamp the right way. Alright, that ought to work. I don't want it to get into the belt, but maybe we'll make something to keep that from happening. So, I think that's going to work. And pour in our power steering fluid so that when we start the motor up, the pump won't have anything to whine about. Okay, there you go, power steering pump. Drink up and quit your whining. Let's see. Oh, it's thirsty. Gonna need some more. Very thirsty. Oh, completely empty. Let's see. Okay, we don't want to overflow, so let's see. Yep, well, she'll go down once we crank her up, but at least the pump's got some lubrication. Okay, next thing I got to do is get my oil filter housing bolted back on, and it goes right up in here. We can see, well, yeah, right there. So I'd video it, but my hands will just be in the way, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that bolted on. Okay, got my oil filter housing bolted on. and I was a little worried about the oil filter not fitting, but it fits right up in there. STP, the Racer's Edge. All right, so now I think we can pour the oil in, and that way we don't crank it up with no oil in it. Okay, before we pour our oil in, I want a functioning dipstick. This is just kind of flopping in the breeze. So I found this little piece of flat bar, and I've got it marked at the angle that I want to bend it, and hopefully I can bend it up to a 90, drill a hole, bolt it there, and then drill a hole in the other end. So we'll see how this is going to work. Okay, let's stick this in here at that angle. Get it snug. Well, that's not grabbing it. Okay, there we go. Now, this is 1/8 inch, so I want to get the big hammer to it. Good 90. Okay, got my bracket all fabbed up, and it's gonna sit like so. And I figure I use an Allen head bolt because all these other bolts on this compressor Allen head. So this should go about there, and got a little 420. And put a nut on that and a nut right there, and we should have our dipstick held down good. First, I want to slap some paint on that so it just doesn't turn to rust. It's just regular old carbon steel. So, we're going to get that painted and bolt it on. Okay, got it all painted up and bolted on. And now that we've got our dipstick mounted and our oil filter in there, we can go ahead and pour in all our fluids. So, I'm going to get the oil topped off and antifreeze. Alright, it's the next day, and I still haven't put my starter on. And we got a ground cable. Of course, has to be made up, and you can make it the length that you need. And I've got my starter. I took the paint stripper and took the paint off where it mounts so we'll get a good ground. And got a short ground cable. This needs to go from the battery over somewhere to one of these bolt holes down here, and just right over here to where the battery tray sits. So I'm gonna go ahead and start making up my terminal ends, and what I want to do is get them all bolted up to the starter and then put the starter in, and then I'll measure the length and put my other terminal end on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. Okay, I prefer to solder my terminal ends on, and sometimes if you crimp them they can wiggle loose and you get corrosion up in there. So soldering is just a lot more reliable. So if we can get this insulation off. Of course, wire strippers don't go big enough for this size of cable. So now go ahead and get our terminal end on there. And I think I'm going to have to use the big torch to get it hot enough. And we'll see if we can get this soldered up. Get it hot enough, it'll just draw that solder right up in there. Pretty much fills up the cavity. It's still hot enough to melt the solder. There we go. Alright, we'll let that cool down and get our heat shrink on there. This heat shrink up on here. There we go. One terminal in installed. Okay, now for the terminal in for the solenoid wire. Get this strip back a little bit. Got our heat shrink on here already, and I want to make sure that we crimp it on there good, and then when it's soldered, it's for sure gonna stay there. There's nothing worse than having to crawl under your car because a wire came uncrimped. So, I'm going to make sure that it would stay on here even without the solder, but with the solder, it makes it kind of a double insurance. Okay. Let's see if we can get this to hold still. And if I can get my torch to work. Get it nice and warm. And there we go. Let that cool down, put some heat shrink on it. Okay, I'm going to double up on the heat shrink on this because it's right down there near the battery terminal, and we don't want to cause a continuous cranking situation. That's never good, especially when the motor's running. So, just in case this gets wiggled around, we want it to be well insulated. We can get this other layer up on there. A lot of people don't like doing electrical, and I didn't either until, you know, figured out how to solder and heat shrink. And it's a lot more fun when you do it the right way and things work, you know. So, but I'm going to go ahead and get this bolted onto the starter, and that way we can put it up in there and bolt it on. Okay, on these older starters, back when they had points, you know, they would have a resistor bypass. If I get the light up here, you can see an R over there. Now what that's for is when the solenoid is engaged, it sends 12 volts to this that would go to the coil, and during cranking you would get a full 12 volts, and then once the starter disengages, the resistor wire would give the coil 9 volts. So if you're ever wondering which one is the one for the starter terminal, it's the one with the S. If you put it over here, nothing's gonna happen. So got my terminals cleaned up, and we'll see if we can get these bolted down. Take up the slack. Red one too. Okay. Let's see if I can get a bolt started. Give me a little bit of slack back on the red one.
Okay.
It's gonna hit. Okay. Need the 5/8 off the workbench. Give me some slack back. Okay, got the starter bolted up. Had a little trouble with the angle of the battery cable, just trying to avoid the headers. But we got it routed up and through there, and now we can put our terminal end on the other side. Okay, I think the man scissors is gonna cut this cable.
Yeah, it could.
Well, we'll give it a shot.
I guess that's why they call them man scissors, huh?
Yeah, they worked. All right, I'm gonna use the little torch because I don't want to catch everything on fire here. It may take a little bit longer to solder, but we won't be burning everything with the big torch.
Plastic.
Yeah. Well, it's a good thing it is. Okay. There we go. Almost forgot the heat shrink.
Don't want to do that.
Okay. this way down here where it doesn't shrink.
Before we need it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Hold it about right there. Try not to wiggle. Get it nice and hot. Get the cable hot a little bit. See if we're hot enough yet. Yeah. Okay. It's amazing how much solder will go up in that terminal end. Okay. I think if that don't hold it, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
Okay. Heat shrunk here. Okay. I know a lot of people out there don't like side post batteries, and I don't like them either with these. Those suck. That's why I always set them up with a bolt and a nut, and it always works out really good because you don't have to worry about lead terminals or anything. So, and you can use a 9/16 wrench if I can get this to twist around the way I want it to. And you can get it really good and tight. Makes for really good contact. And I always like to try to use stainless steel bolts. This one is not, that one is. We'll get another stainless bolt here. And see if we can get this one started. Snug that down. And then tighten your nut up against it. And it's just so much easier to get loose and install. So, I'm going to go ahead and see if this old starter still works. Seems like it's still cranking. Okay, we made a lot of progress and we got it spinning around. So I think this is where we're going to end this video. It's time to go home and edit the video. The puppy dogs are wanting to go home. They're getting a little restless. So we appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you in the next one.